Hey everyone, this is Alec from Reddit's Hex Encounter community. Just wanted to say thank you for joining me today as we continue our stream of um, fifth column games where there is Discord. We're playing this game in Vassal and we're picking up here where we left off. When we left off last time, the task force had some slight delays getting further in. We're still on card 4 here for the situation report. For the situation report. And we have 2 event cards that are lingering. The first one being What's That in the Water, which is giving us a possibility of getting a limpet mine explosion on any force that transits Gibraltar, which we're going to have to deal with international opinion to get rid of that. And also, gentlemen, we have a war to fight. So essentially the 2 air groups aren't playing along that nice. The adversary Navy has sallied forth a few times, put to sea, and resulting in the loss of HMS Spartan with all hands, along with several events causing us to lose the Nordic Fury with 3rd paratroopers, and then we effectively lost 2 reinforcement frigates due to an event as well. Now, as far as Argentinian losses, the ARA Santa Fe was lost, and so they are now down a sub. We ended turn 6, and we are now about to begin turn 7. For those of you joining the stream, welcome. If you're live, please give a shout out in the channel and let me know that you're here, and let me know if you have any questions as we get going. If you haven't yet watched the first video in this series, I encourage you to do so you can get a chance to see the explanation of the game mechanics and the first several turns of play. But we're just going to keep plowing through this. Hopefully, we're certainly not going to get close enough to launch Operation Sutton tonight, but hopefully we'll get close enough where we'll continue to have some dicey encounters, particularly with more of the Argentine Air Force coming into play. So with that, let's hop into the sequence of play. We are in turn 7. We've advanced the turn marker. We will now determine weather on the roll of a D12. This is their shorthand for 2D6 for some strange reason, and we see that we rolled a 4. 4 is probably going to give us some pretty awesome weather. Let's see here. Fair weather. Flip this guy over. And we do get some changes here. So let's flip. Let me see if we can't get that to the weather marker. Okay. So what this is giving us now is the scramble modifier is -1. The Air Force is more likely to scramble fighters to hit us than previously, since this is good flying weather. Additionally, the detection modifier has changed, and so the carrier group actually now has enhanced detection, which is going to give it an improvement on its the die that it uses to detect the incoming British task force. So, okay, that's weather. That'll make it a more active turn. We'll go ahead and do our event draw now. Let's see. Here we go. 20 is the event. We are taking the fight to the enemy. Let's see what we have here. So going to the intel booklet, the task force receives a signal direct from the Prime Minister that the Argentine intransience at the negotiating table will only be softened by a dramatic show of military strength. As a result, an attack on a mainland Argentine airbase must be launched. Okay, we got quite a bit of text here, but essentially our 2 options are to mount a strongly worded protest to the plan. After a major debate within the War Cabinet, the Prime Minister reluctantly agrees to cancel the order. However, dovish elements in the government leak details of the controversy to the media. Domestic opinion falls by 2, which is pretty big. Essentially, the cabinet and the armed forces are seen as fatally divided in the Prime Minister's weekend. So if we don't want to sacrifice to domestic opinion, we could launch the attack as ordered. So what's going to happen here? First, at least 1, but if required, both carriers must be placed in the western task force zone and remain there for the remainder of the turn. So they're going to push a bit forward. This is a deliberate change in the normal rolls. Then 5 Sea Harriers must each be placed in a free space on the combat display. Next, choose a target of the air raid by personally selecting one of the air bases currently listed on the active SIPRET card. Roll a 1d8 for each attacking Sea Harrier. On a roll of 1, the airbase is out of action for 1 turn, starting with the current turn. Place the aircraft from the airbase on the appropriate space on the turn track, as indicated when they're ready to resume operations. Whilst the airbase is damaged, no raids can be launched from this location. If the base is selected for a raid during the scramble phase, then all raids for that day are canceled. Now, roll 1d6 for each Sea Harrier. On a roll of 1, it is shot down. All surviving Sea Harriers are placed in the flown box, and international opinion falls by 2. Wow, okay, so I can risk 2 domestic opinion by by protesting and convincing them to not do the order, or I can lose 2 international opinion, for which I am already down by 1, risk some Sea Harriers, and potentially knock out an airbase for a turn, while simultaneously pretty much hosing my air defenses. Now, with where we are, let's see here. I could go for Trelu and have a decent chance of knocking it out, but boy, would I be risking a lot of stuff, although they are likely to fly today. But to be honest, I'm not terribly interested in risking that much international opinion at the moment. So I am actually going to take option A. Let's see, we'll discard the event, and I will lose 2 domestic opinion there. Okay, so that was the event draw. Now coming to our SITREP card. Let's see here. All right, so we do now get a new SITREP card. I'll discard this one, and we will move 1 closer. So the changes here for us is the Rio Grande Air Base is now twice as likely. It was only going to come up 10% of the time, but now it'll come up 20% of the time. I still only have 1 air effort assessment, so still probably only 1 force coming out. But now at Air Alert Assessment 4 and a sunny day, we've got about 50-50 odds that this is going to happen. So, okay. I am fine with all of this. So that's the SITREP card. Task Force Deployment. Or where do we want everyone to go? So let's see here. No reinforcements are scheduled to arrive on turn 7. Just verify that. Okay, no reinforcements. We now get the British submarine placement, noting we are down 1 submarine. We do have, what do we have? We have the surface carrier group. Oh, and I neglected to rotate my used sub previously. Okay. We have the carrier group. We have the enemy sub in the coastal. In all likelihood, they're going to stay there. But in the event that one of them does actually come out, I do want to have someone back in the search box. So I'm going to have that be the submarine deployment for the turn. We're now going to do the task force deployment. So far, this task force deployment's been working for us. I don't think we need to do any change on it, particularly not since we don't have any reinforcements to work with. And now we'll do our cap placement. So we have this event still going on with the air groups not coordinating. So everything here is going to be coming from Invincible. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially, I think I want to put everyone in the air. I don't think I want to hold anyone back, given how likely it is that air events are going to happen. So I will, let's see here, park a pair here in the 7-9 as the most likely spot. I'm going to park a wingman pair here in, I wonder if that's my only wingman pair. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to do onesies for the rest of them. 1 here in defense zone, 1 here on 8, 1 here on 6, and 1 here on the task force, just to make sure. On the risk matrix, you know, oftentimes you'll see things listed as probability and severity, and the probability of an enemy fighter getting here is very low at a 12, but the severity would be very high. There's a lot of important things there, so I do want to make sure that there's a cap. So, all right, very active cap today. So that is the combat air patrol placement. Now what I'm not doing, all right, maybe I want to think about this. What I would not be doing then is any supply interdiction. I do think I want to do some supply interdiction. So why don't I alter that placement just a little bit. Boy, I really don't want to alter that placement. I'm going to put this one. All right, you know what? I'm going to take everything back I said about cap on the task force. I'm going to do 2 Harriers on supply interdiction so that I can continue to weaken. The end game here is getting our land forces to survive. I'm going to want to start starving the enemy land forces. So reviewing the rules from last week, since it's been a little bit. There we go. So at the start of the game, all right, at the start of each turn, British forces may attempt to interdict. I move the Harriers from the ready boxes to the combat display. I roll 1d6 for each Harrier. If we get a 1 or a 2, we are good. So let's go ahead and do that, 2d6. I rolled a 2, which means we do decrement the Argentine supply by 1. And good hunting, you two. And and they now move to their flown boxes, and they'll recover at the end. Very good weather here, so it'll be an automatic recovery, thankfully, which has been nice from the poorer weather we've had previously. Okay, so that was the interdiction phase. Now SAS marker placement. Again, Rio Grande is a bit more of a problematic base since it does have the Exocet carrying super Entard. But again, we're most likely to see things, just the standard bombers coming here out of Trelu. So I want to keep watching Trelu. You know what? I take it back. I'm not going to watch Trelu. I'm going to come down here and watch Rio Grande. I am unwilling to accept those exosets or not have an opportunity to queue on those exosets. So we'll try that. Okay. So that should end the task force deployment phase. We'll move on here to Argentine naval deployment. So for review, that's section 13 of the rules. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting with the submarine deployment. These would be rolling D4s or D6s. What do these guys roll? 3d4 for each submarine. Okay, so there's only one submarine left since I sank the other one. Go us. So 3d4 for the San Luis, and we'll see where it goes. Okay, 3d4. I rolled a single 1, which means he will stay where he is in the coastal box. That is the submarine deployment. We'll now go into the fleet deployment. I'll start with the carrier group, which is already at sea here in the coastal box. And he will roll 3d8. And let me verify that. All right, so let me just actually get this guy off board since he's the first one. Actually, no, never mind. He is ready for battle. So we're just going to see if he then comes in. Okay, so he's ready. After all his rolls, the Argentine fleet deployment. If they are in port or at sea, they now prepare to hunt. Roll 3d6 for each task group. Okay, so I'll start here with the carrier, 3d6. 2 1s, which means the carrier moves to the search box. Very interesting. Okay, for the patrol, 3d6. He stays where he is, and now at the end of all this, the battle group moves to port, and he's ready to go. All right, well, I'm glad I split these guys out. I'm now going to get a shot at both of those assets. That's really good. Okay, so as far as naval deployment goes, I think we're good. We've done the readiness. Everyone's been readied, and everyone's deployed. So that is the Argentine naval deployment. And now we're going to do sub-V sub combat. So to start with, British submarine search roll. So we're going to start with me. The British sub is in the coastal block. So for British subs in the coastal block, just get the right one here. I detect an Argentine sub on a roll of a D4. Is that? No, I'm sorry, that's a surface sub. On a roll of a surface contact. So I should get a detection on a roll of a D6. Okay, British submarine attempting to detect. Yes, okay, so D6. So this is the British sub to detect the Argentine sub on a D6. No detection. Okay, so that is British sub on sub. Now we'll do Argentine submarine. Its search role. It is actually only going to find on a D8. So the Argentine submarine does not find. So that should be the end of submarine combat. And now we'll move on to British sub versus Argentine surface combatant. So we are here in the search box with a British sub looking for the carrier group. So in the search box, looking for a carrier group, it's a D6. For the British, oh, all right, let's see how this goes. I like that roll. Let me just make sure I hop to the right rule here, because we will have to determine rules of engagement. So this is rule 13.6.1. Essentially, the British weren't too keen to escalate that quickly. You can imagine that if there really hadn't been any serious hostilities, no ships had been sunk, that you didn't want to open with taking away the other country's only aircraft carrier. That would be quite an escalatory step. But in this case, that already happened. So, okay, so we rolled the die. With the 1, we have a detection, and now the detected task group counters are placed on the combat mat as normal. So we'll get this over on the combat mat. Okay. So if no British vessels, including submarines, or Argentine vessels, including submarines, have so far been sunk, then prior to engaging task groups outside of the total exclusion zone, British submarine commanders are required to get confirmation from Sink Fleet that the rules of engagement allow for the combat of forces. In this case, we are in luck, since both a British and an Argentine submarine have been sunk already. This is a shooting war, so that paragraph does not apply. Excellent. So the attack on the task force meets the rules of engagement, which means that we'll roll the attack as normal. If the attack is unsuccessful, consult the what happened block. So we'll go ahead and do that. So British submarine attacking a surface combatant attacks on a D4. So let's go ahead and do that. Swing and a miss. Okay, so no joy there. And so we'll do the failed attack resolution, which is step 5 of this. And here we go. So this is done by rolling 2d6, British sub versus Argentine vessel. So I'll roll the 2d6 here. And we rolled an 11. The submarine attempts to obtain confirmation ROE, cannot establish communications. Attack is postponed. Argentine vessel returned to the originating naval patrol box. So we were fine on the baked-in ROE rule, but the result of this failed attack was indeed that this commander was a little bit trigger shy, was wanting to get confirmation, and missed their opportunity to sink that carrier. Okay, well, fog of war and all that. Okay, so that gets us out of that phase. That's been completed. And now we're going to go into the Argentine service groups versus British subs. So let's see if these carriers end up finding us. The carrier group, which is numbered 79.1, there we go, detects submarines in the search box on a D8, and it does not detect. And so now we're going to go to Argentine Navy versus the British Task Force. So, sorry. So we're going to hop to rule 13.8 and kind of run through this since, actually that's something to check here on, is if this weather improvement, which is this here, right, here we go. The carrier group detection was actually a better detection. I'm going to go ahead and say that that probably was. Again, this is a good weather to be doing air operations for all of your anti-sub warfare assets if they had a helicopter doing this. So I'm going to take that D8 back and roll a D6. And that still didn't work. Okay, so now we're going to go for versus British fleet. Argentine task group submarines currently occupying the patrol box will attempt to detect the task force. We'll roll the appropriate detection roll in the combat chart, cross-referencing the appropriate target. If successful, the Argentine vessel in the combat display, the Royal Navy vessels targeted will be dealt with in a moment. So if the Argentine carrier group is in the search zone, it rolls a d6. So we'll go ahead and do that. This is the carrier search for our task force. And it does not do that. Okay, so a whole lot of nothing on Navy, which is, you know, has a potential for something exciting, but not this turn. So we'll go now into the air phase, chapter 5 here for what's going to happen on the scrambling. And in this case, I anticipate likely a successful scramble roll. So the air alert assessment for scramble is currently a 4. Okay. So we're going to roll our d10. And, okay, so I rolled a 10 against the 4. What we would do is we would decrement that by 1, do the scramble modifier. So our 10 becomes a 9, and then we compare the 9 to the 4. In this case, the scramble roll was greater than the air alert assessment. The Navy stands down, the Air Force stands down, and we skip all the way here to end phase. There is no air activity this turn. All right, so we'll do that cleanup now. Cleanup for us involves our Harriers being recovered. So let me bring all these guys back to the flown box. Should be Control G. Yes, okay, good. And what we'll do is we'll move all of the arming Hermes to ready. And we'll move all these guys to arming. And the Harriers are ready for their next day. Next we will, that was Harrier recovery, that was Harrier refit. All these other markers should come off when I pull off the weather chit and vassal. So we'll return that. Yep, and everything went back to where it was. Okay, that was the end of the turn, and we will now advance to turn number 8. Also not a reinforcement turn. Roll our 2d6 here on weather. Rolled a 7, which is a gray day, which is pretty much neutral. Control 7 here. Okay, so no scramble modifier, no detection modifier, just vanilla rules at this point. Do our event draw. Assuming I can grab the event cards. I may have discarded the entire deck somehow. That would be regrettable. Let me pull that up. Let's see, discarded cards. Let's see what's in here. Yep, the entire deck is in here, which is pretty awesome. Let's see here. Well, I guess what we're going to do is we're going to take all of them. Hit OK. Oops. I'm going to take all of them. Hit OK. And there we are. This is really killing me a little bit. Flip. Pardon me while I fight Vassal briefly. Regrettably, the select all feature is not working as I had hoped. If I pull them off, that works. If anybody's watching the channel and sees anything they recognize, let me know. We'll get those. That's one of them. We did that one already. That I remember. All right. This is the Vassal equivalent to me dropping the cards and picking them up off the floor right now. That's what this is. Yipe. That may have been one that we had too. Take a look. Okay, these look familiar. 42, 23, 34. Okay, so those are ones that we probably had. We'll just go with it at this point. Okay, and it's doing random again. All right, so our 6 is our event this turn. See what that has in store for us. We want this over by Christmas. Conservative ministers of parliament warned the government chief whip that pressure is mounting for a quick victory in the campaign. For every day after 21 May that passes without the launch of Operation Sutton, domestic opinion falls by 1. And this is a standing event. So we're getting pressured to kind of move along here. Regrettably, there we go. So that is now also a standing event, in addition to the Limpet Mines and in addition to my air groups fighting each other. So I do want to try and get Sutton happening soon. We will advance the sit rep, get 1 closer. So we're now on sit rep 6, which has the same air efforts and the same basing. So we're still in the same scenario that we were. We should just be 1 card closer than when we were before. And indeed, that's the case. So now that we've done that, task force deployment. Going to make sure I don't miss any element here. No reinforcements. Submarines. I like them where they are. I want these folks to be split as they had been. Task force placement is fine. I do have more aircraft for cap now, so actually I can kind of eat my cake and have it too, still leaving the 2 or 3 that I wanted for interdiction. So let's see what we have here. I will put a pair of them up here. I'll put 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save 2 of these guys to stay on deck. There we go. And I'm going to launch the other 2 for the supply interdiction. So I'm going to do that right now. Supply interdiction should be on a D6, if I remember correctly. Just flipping to that page in the rules. And it is indeed a D6. So here's my 2D6 for supply interdiction. That is successful. So we'll lose 1 more ground supply over here. Harriers have been doing quite a good job here. And now I'll move these guys to flown. All right. So I've got 2 still on Hermes ready to go. And I have a reasonable cap in place. After I do interdiction, the SAS, and again we'll leave those by the Exocet base. Argentine naval deployment. So starting the naval deployment with the submarine. This is a 3D4 for the submarine movement. They are a little bit more aggressive than the surface combatants. But no 1s are rolled. He stays where he is. Moving from now to the surface group readiness, all surface groups are ready. So we're just going to roll for their position. Each surface group rolls 3d6. The carrier group, which is already deployed, does not roll a 1. He stays in the search box. The battle group rolls its 3d6. It moves into the coastal area, and the patrol, also rolling 3d6, again moves into the patrol area. So a lot more Navy out this time. And so better chances of something happening, which I guess is exciting. That gives us a change in the board state. So that was the Argentine naval deployment. And now we're going to get into the submarines. Thankfully for me, the British subs are the ones that go first. And so I will, of course, do sub v sub here. I'll start with the one in the coastal area. British coastal submarine detects a submarine on a D6. We'll roll that. No joy. The British search box submarine detects a surface combatant on a D6. We'll roll for him. Hey, he missed his opportunity last go around, but he has it again. Rules of engagement are going... Oh, actually, that would have come up next go. Let me just make sure I didn't... All right, well, we will scrap that. That was for sub v sub combat. So the British submarines didn't get anything. Actually, I am going to get a chance to reuse. No, I'm not. Okay. British submarines didn't get anything. So that was an errant D6 that I rolled. Now we have the Argentine submarines that are going to search for their quarry. So the Argentine submarine searches in coastal and will find on a D8. So we'll roll the Argentine D8. That is no good. And now the sub versus sub combat is over. Okay, one extra die roll there. Sub versus surface combatant. Okay. If anyone's in the chat, I'll take your ruling on if I can reuse that one that I rolled. It was rolled in good faith, so I will say that I can. So I had rolled the one on that search. The ROE is still satisfied, so now we'll do the attack roll. This is a British sub attacking a surface combatant. This rolls a d4. And I will roll my 1d4. No luck. So we're going to go to the what happens after you miss your attack table, which is rolled on a 2d6. I rolled a 7. Target changes course away from the task force. SSN captain postpones the attack. If target was submarine, place it ready for war. If target was a task group, all task groups and originating naval blocks are placed off board. All right, so we essentially somehow chase the carrier group away, and it is off board, which is a decent place for it. So we'll call that a mission kill at this point. I can still have a chance now for my submarine in the coastal box to find what he is looking for and engage them as well. So we'll do his search roll. He will search for the battle group. So this is a D, let's see, in the coastal block, the British submarines detect on a D4. So we'll roll that. No detection. Okay. So the British subs are done. They chased away the carriers, so that's good. And now we'll do the surface groups detection. So each of the surface and the battle groups are going to get a chance to detect in coastal. They detect on a D12 for the patrol group. I'm sorry, a D6 for the patrol group and a D6 for the other one. So we will roll for each of them. I'll roll them at the same time because if either of them find the sub, they both get to attack. Neither one of them find the submarine. So the Argentine surface group is done there. But now we need to see if the Argentine Navy detects the task force. I'll roll these one at a time, and if one of them detects, I'll flip to that roll section to figure out what's going first. I'll roll first for the patrol. These are both really awful rolls. D12 for the patrol and D10 for the battle group. So we'll roll the D12. No. D10. No. Okay. So no naval combat. We'll now move forward to the air combat. The air alert assessment is 4. We are not modifying the scramble marker, so I'm going to need a 1, 2, or a 3 on the D10 to get them to scramble. I rolled a 7, so there's no scramble, and we are done with turn 8. The British keep steaming in. So that's the end of that turn. We'll run through the end of turn sequence of play. First of all, getting the carriers back to the flown box, and then once they're there, refitting everyone. So let's see here, Control G, get those back, and now get those ready to fly, and put these in arming. Okay, so we're done with the Harriers. We're done with the scramble markers. We'll clear off the weather marker. Okay, we should be good now. All right, so that is the end of turn 8. Moving on to turn 9. For those of you hopping in on the stream a little late, we are playing Where There Is Discord by Fifth Column Games, the solitaire simulation war game on the Falklands Island conflict, war, if you will. And we're moving on to turn 9. So now that we are there, we'll go ahead and check for our weather. That's on 2d6. Rolling an 8. C8 should be misty. Okay, we'll see what the heck is this. Okay, that slightly affected the scramble modifier. So the adversary is going to be a little less likely to scramble. Did not affect our area recovery, however. So this is actually a pretty good roll for us. We'll do our event draw. Looking forward to eventually getting events that aren't completely terrible for me. Event 1, the military balance is not in our favor. Okay, if this card is drawn on turn 1, no, okay. The Argentine leadership is warned that it will be impossible to defend the islands against a sustained British landing. As a result, a 24-hour ceasefire to pursue negotiations is offered. I may, A, accept the ceasefire, which means a ceasefire comes into effect for 1 turn. International opinion will rise by 1. Also, if domestic opinion is currently 4 or less, domestic opinion rises. British were increasingly skeptical and are now welcome the search for peace. However, if we accept that domestic opinion is 7 or higher, we are currently at 8, it will fall by 1. The British public will not be in the mood to compromise. Or we can reject the offer. There's no effect. So, reviewing the rules, we'd have a 1-for-1 offset here in opinion, pushing domestic opinion down but regaining up to 10 international opinion. The relevant decision to make here then really comes down to what a ceasefire entails. And so for the ceasefire, there is an abbreviated sequence of play that is just the turn marker, opinion adjustment, troop deployments, naval deployments, and task forces that are off board, and then sea harriers. Importantly, we would not get any progress on our situation report. We won't be getting closer. So we're going to go ahead and choose to not accept the ceasefire, which is really a no effect, which honestly is about as good as these cards get, is no effect. So, all right, that was our event draw. Let's now move up the sit rep, get 1 closer. Current sit rep is about the same. Now slightly more likely that the Exocets get launched at us instead of the medium bombers. Okay. Task force deployment. Going back to the trusty sequence of play. Make sure I don't forget anything. No reinforcements still on turn 9. We do not get the submarine placement. Okay, what do I have? Again, I kind of like having a little bit of a backstop, but boy, is there a lot of stuff up here, which is all likely to stay in this ballpark. I'm really tempted, but you know what? That'll also double the risk of me having my submarine detected. I think I would still play it too deep. So the submarines are going to stay where they are. I like the task force where they are. Cap, I'm back to having the slightly smaller force available to me here on Invincible. So I'll just have, you know what, maybe what I'll start doing is I'm going to start having just 2 on Cap, and it'll be the 2 that are most likely to get called up. There we go. So I'll put these guys on Cap here in the 7-9. Which, as I've been doing this, let me triple check here that I can place a pair of them. I can actually, because if you get a pair, you get bounce. And I will fly another 2 against the interdiction mission, leaving 2 ready to respond. So against the interdiction mission, I'll roll 2d6, looking for a 1 or a 2. Oops, well, there's 1d6, there's a 2. There's another 2. Okay, so that's successful. The Argentine ground forces continue to suffer poor supply due to the effects of these Harriers. So good job. I'll move those to flown. And now we're done with our task force deployment. So we'll see who comes up here. The carrier is fairly unlikely to ready for war. This is the one that is the most guarded to send forth. So I will be rolling a d8 and looking for a 1. If I get the 1, it will move to the ready for war box. So let me roll the d8. It is not ready. And now I'll just check for the deployment of these assets. I suppose I should have started with the submarine, starting with the Argentine submarine, 3d4. It stays where it is. And then the 2 task groups top down, those are each 3d6 rolls. First one stays where he is. Second one stays where they are. Okay, so everything's happening coastal. And now I'll do sub v sub. So the British submarine detecting in the coastal water against a subsurface contact detects on a d6. No detection. So we're going to move on now to the Argentine submarine. Where are we? Here we go. The Argentine sub will detect on a d8. It does detect. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move into that phase. Given that it has a detection, it will do an attack roll. The Argentine submarine attacks on a d10, and it misses. But we now go into the failed attack resolution, which should be on this table here. Argentine vessels versus British vessels. Let me just make sure I'm getting the right procedure here for the submarine versus submarine. Let's see, 13.5.6. Let me just make sure that there would be a spoiled attack. All right. Let's see here. Once all detection rolls have been made, Argentine submarines now attack detected British submarines. Repeat the process outlined above for the detected submarines, this time using the other row. Remove all surviving British submarines from the display and place them back onto their appropriate naval boxes. But they will flip. All right, that makes sense. He's not going to be pursuing those other units. They cannot engage the task groups this turn. It's too busy evading. Remove the surviving Argentine submarine from the combat display and put them back to ready for war. Let's see here, ready for war. There we go. As he has to get ready and be conservative. Okay, so it looks like we don't then go to the post-attack chart in this case. I'm just glad I checked. That would happen per rule 13.9. Let me just double check what 13.9 states, which is Argentine versus British fleet. So we will leave that there. The submarines aren't vessels for this purpose. Okay, so that's sub v sub. Now we're going to do British sub versus Argentine surface combatants. I actually have nobody eligible to do that since my submarine has been evading. We'll see if these surface groups detect and engage that submarine, however. Since I believe that there is nothing saying that the Argentines can't do this. Here we go. They're able to attempt to engage British submarines in a similar manner. Look for which naval boxes contain both the submarines and the task group, which they are for each task group in a contested box. Roll 1 die. Okay. All right. So we're going to try and detect these for the surface vessels. What they are looking for are let's see here, we're in the coastal box. And so they are looking for 6s on their detection. Okay, so I'll roll 2d6 like I did previously. Either one of them scoring a 1 will, or both. Okay, so they both have detected the British submarine. I'll just kind of move everybody over here. And they're both now going to attack the submarine. Excuse me. For each task group in a contested box can now attack one British submarine. For each attack, 1 die is rolled. Results are handled in the same way as sub versus sub combat. Remove all surviving British submarines and put them back in their box. All large and tiny task groups in the contested naval box are immediately placed off board. Essentially, they were hunting the subs and worrying less about the task group. All right, so these two, it's going to be a D10 and a D12 for their attack rolls against a submarine. So I'll just roll both of those. Here's the D10 for its attack roll and a D12. Okay, neither one of those hit. So both of these, having just done that, per that rule, they are now placed off board. Okay. All right, well, a lot of off board over there. I believe that this submarine, oh, you know what? No, he just went there. He just returned to port after successfully or unsuccessfully attacking the British submarine. That's correct. Okay. All right, so that is that. That is the end of naval combat for this turn. Some pretty close calls, but nothing too bad. So getting now to scramble, we have a +1 modifier in the scramble display for this being misty, which means that they're going to be less likely to come out. So D10 +1, looking for a number less than a 4. And a 5 means that we will not be having any air contact. So we will go ahead now and skip to the end of the turn and continue to press towards the islands. All right, so save. Doing the in-turn sequence of play. We'll start with the Harriers. Get you guys back on deck. There they are. And now that that's happened, we'll do the refit. So put you guys back to ready. You guys back to arming. Harriers are done. What would be next would be the weather. I'll go ahead and get you back to where you're going. All right, everything's all set. So that's the end of the turn 9. We're now moving to turn 10. Again, no reinforcements. So now that we're on turn 10, we'll check for the weather. 2d6. Rolling a 4. This is not going to be good for me. Fair weather. Okay, so there's now a favorable detection modifier, for scramble modifier rather, and the carrier group, should it put to sea, which really it won't be able to. Maybe it won't be able to. I think they're all here. Yeah, there's the carrier group. Okay. The carrier group is... I may have... no, I did roll for that and it didn't ready. That was the issue. Okay. And it's not going to be able to put to sea, so that'll be fine. All right, event draw. All right, what do we have here? 27 is the event. Your flight deck has just broken one of my Harriers. Okay. Forward elevator damage to HMS Invincible following a heavy landing. I'm sorry, forward elevator. Yeah, following a heavy landing reduces the operational capability of the carrier. Let's see, which one's Invincible? Okay, good. Invincible is the one that is just cycling off of being the one that's doing operations. The carrier, so there are two options. I may, A, the carrier and 2 warships, not submarines or landing craft, are placed on the turn track 1 turn ahead of the current turn. They can return to normal operations with the task force on the following day. So essentially it separates out while it and falls behind while it refits and then catches up. Or do nothing. The event remains face up on the board, and for each turn it remains on the board every time the player attempts to place a Sea Harrier from the damaged carrier on cap or scramble. Roll a d6. On a 1 or a 2, the Harrier is placed into flown. The event may be discarded if and when you take the repairs outlined above. Okay, this is the time to take those repairs. This carrier was cycling off anyway. So I'm going to take Invincible and 2 escorts. And those have to be escorts, I believe. Not submarines or landing craft. It could be support ships, I imagine. But let me do this. Let me take Invincible. Let me take... one of the support, can I take the support ships? Which one is this? I think I can take one of the support ships. So let me take one of the support ships, and let me take this guy here back in the southeast quadrant. Okay, so there is my little detachment that will be rejoining us on Tuesday. All right, well, thanks, event. You can go away now. All right, that was our event. Let's now continue to steam towards the islands. Next sitrep is an 8. What happens here? Okay. We're now at a moderate air effort assessment. So at 2 now, the Argentinians have the ability to launch 2 air raids on my forces. And importantly, we're starting to see an increased percentage of bases being available. So San Julian is now available, which would give us some daggers. So, okay. Task force deployment. Now I do have some things to choose from here. First thing to do is to determine my, so I pull up the rules, make sure I got the sequence of play correct. No reinforcements, submarine deployments. I forgot to flip this guy back over, but I find it unlikely. In fact, it doesn't really matter. There's absolutely no way that any of these can come get me this turn. Nobody's putting to sea. So really all I have to concern myself about is the location of my forces on the task force display, and then the potential of where my air forces are. So, okay. I do have one escort in here with the task force center. They're going to stay there. I kind of like this, but I'll just have a hole here in the southeast. I do have the more capable carrier providing cap. So we will get a somewhat robust cap. I'm going to have 4 Harriers, or maybe 5 Harriers. Yeah, we'll do 5 Harriers. Make sure I got a good group in here. Yep. So I've got 5 Harriers that are going to be actually flying over the task force. There we go. I will have 2 on standby, and I will send 2 to do interdiction. So we'll go ahead and roll interdiction now. This is 2d6. I'm looking for a 1 or a 2. And I got it. Boy, you guys rock. So it's yet another supply. And that's it for task force deployment. Argentine naval deployment, all we're really going to do here is see where folks go. The San Luis needs to go to port. Just make sure I don't miss anything. Yeah, so the submarines, make sure that the ones in ready for war aren't available to put to sea immediately. It would make sense to me that they would have to stop by the port first, or get readied in the port. Yeah, for each submarine in the port or at sea. And so nobody's in port. So what we'll do now is he will stay there for the moment. We'll now do the readiness roll for each of the Argentine surface combatants. And I'll roll 1 each of a d4, d6, d8. And depending on what I roll, a 1 on, we'll get one of them to come up. Okay, so the patrol group readies, and they're good to go. That's the middle one. And then at the end of the phase, the 2 here and ready for war make it to port. So they'll be eligible to put to sea next turn, tomorrow. All right, that's it for naval deployment. We're going to skip over all this naval combat since nobody's at sea. Let's come right here to scramble. Okay. So, favorable scramble modifier for the Argentinians. It's -1, and the air alert assessment level is 4. So, given that this is the first time that we have more than one possible scramble, we'll go ahead and take a look at Chapter 5 and make sure we're doing this right. Okay, and so we will roll our d10, subtract 1 from it. 9 minus 1 is 8. So that is not going to do that. In the event the modified scramble roll is equal to or greater than the air alert assessment, the Argentine Navy will stand down, go to end phase. Okay. So that looks like it's done, just period. Yeah, anytime they choose not to scramble, they stand down. So we will skip all the way here to the end and just continue to move closer and closer. So let's see, we're on end turn. Big things to do are to recover the Harriers, flip submarines, and weather. So we'll do that, get you guys back on the boat. All right, recover the Harriers, refit. So we'll put you guys to ready, put you guys to arming, and get the weather back. Okay, so all that is done, and now we're ready for turn 11. We are now getting close to when we will get reinforcements, and importantly now we get those ships back. So I will grab these new ships and bring them at least in the neighborhood so I remember to see them. Okay, weather on a 2d6, and I rolled a 10, which is going to be foggy. All right, so we have a poor search for the carrier group and a +1 for the scramble modifier, and we actually do need to do Harrier recovery rolls on a d10. Event draw. Okay. Just take a look at the event for this turn. 13. Houston, we have a problem. Don't tell me we have a problem. Okay. NASA receives a request from the Argentines to conduct photographic reconnaissance of the South Atlantic using the civilian Landsat satellite system. We may A, pressure the Americans into denying the request on technical grounds, a clear breach of international agreements on the use of civilian space technology. International opinion falls by 1, which would impact our use of the Chilean staging and electronic warfare. Or B, take no actions. The images provided give the Argentines valuable intelligence on the task force location. This event card remains face up on the board. For every turn it remains on the board, the number of Argentine aircraft involved in a raid is increased by 1 to a maximum of 4. This does not apply to the super Etnard attacks. All right, so it looks like at any point here, I can tell them to shove it and lose an international opinion, which would, for me, have a problem with the Chileans. Or we can let it ride and just get one more aircraft every time an aircraft needs to come at us. So what's the risk here? If we look at the targeting procedure, how the British task force here was cued to the threat, we'll see here that the very first step would be to see if we have the Nimrods, and we'll keep the Nimrods going pretty much till the end of the international opinion. The U.S. will allow Nimrods no matter what. If the Nimrods didn't work, we have our SAS marker. That only helps us with 1 base, but it does help. And if we don't have that, then we fall back to the Chilean government to allow for the use of surveillance and early warning from there. If they're all unavailable, then there's simply no Harrier scramble. So that's kind of our fallback. We'll have the Nimrods, and that's good. But the Chileans are kind of the last line. So I can choose to either have slightly larger scrambles and know that they're coming, or we can choose to lose a little bit of face here, lose the support to the Chileans for providing us this information, but continue to have the status quo. All right. If anyone's around in chat, you're welcome to chime in. I'm inclined to lose the Chilean support, to be honest with you. I think that I'd rather not. No, I take it back. I'm inclined to have the stronger attacks, and we will just try and deal with them. So for the moment, I think we're going to do that. If I can get an international opinion back, I might then revisit this and choose to, pardon me, choose to get rid of that. But for the moment, I think we're going to go with having the decrement. Okay, so that was our event draw. We'll now do our sit rep. We will continue. I will continue to press in. This would be a pretty, yeah, so there's a negative scramble modifier. It's not a bad day to sail in. All right, so now that we're on 9, let's see, still moderate AEA, 2 scrambles possible, still error alert assessment of 4, and San Julian is a little bit more likely to happen. So, okay. So let's do our task force deployment. As a standard, we'll start with our Navy. We do have a potential that one or both of these would come forward. It's not likely that they would go as far as the search box, although it's as likely as any other turn that they get there. So again, I'm going to go too deep. I like my submarines where they are. Looking here now, I am, well, we'll do this in order. That way I can make sure that I actually get these aircraft with Hermes rejoining, or rather the Invincible rejoining the task force. So let's see here. We have the submarine placements, task force display placement. So now I can bring all these guys back to where they were in the task force and have the task force press on. So the task force has been rejoined. Now the cap will come up. And again, this is our smaller cap. This is the smaller carrier. So let's take our pair here for the most likely approach. Let's take a pair for combat for interdiction. Then we'll leave 2 for scramble. Actually, all right, so yeah, on a D10, I think I'll risk it on crashes at this point. Weather's not that bad, and I think I'll still do standard ops. So, okay. So now in the interdiction rolls, 2d6. First time that didn't work. Oh well, all right. We'll put these back on flown, and we'll roll their recovery at the end of the turn as standard. So we're good there. Argentine naval deployment. So we'll start with the submarine, see if the submarine comes forward, then it'll roll 3d4. It does roll 2 1s, so that will place it in the search box. I'm glad I had a guy back there. And now doing a readiness roll for the battle in the carrier group. Referencing chapter 13, that's a d6 and a d8 for the battle in the carrier. So d6, no joy, d8, no joy. Okay, so those guys aren't ready yet. But we'll roll our 3d6 on patrol, see if he comes out. He does, and he goes as far as the coastal area. Okay, so the Navy is now out. We'll do sub v sub. The only the British sub v sub is happening here in the search box. That will be a successful detection on a d6. It is not a successful detection. The Argentines now get their chance. This is a successful detection on a d8. That is also not successful, so the subs are ineffective. We'll now do the British sub detecting this patrol group. So we're still in the coastal area. British sub detecting a surface combatant is on a d4. That is a success. So briefly jumping back to the rules on how this work. So British submarine versus Argentine task groups. Again, we run into the issue here of needing to check the rules of engagement. So unrotated British submarines in the contested box with Argentine group may now attempt detection, which they did. Detected Argentine task group counters are placed on the combat display, so we have detected this one. We'll go ahead and put him here. Okay. There have been British vessels and Argentine vessels sunk, so we do not need to get confirmation on the ROE, and the combat will proceed. We'll do the attacks that have been authorized. And this will be a 1d4 on the attack roll against the surface combatant. So attacking with a d4. That was not a 1, so no luck there. If the attack is unsuccessful, consult the resolution chart. So, looking at the left side of this, British submarines versus Argentine vessels. Rolling on 2d6 to figure out what the outcome is. Roll the 5. Search aircraft detected. The submarine abandons the attack. Submarine is not detected. The Argentine vessel returns to the originating patrol box. So we got spooked. He comes here, which is unfortunate for us because we now go into the Argentine surface group versus British sub event, which this surface group combatant is now eligible for. This detection happens on a d6. All surface group versus British submarine detections in the coastal area happen on a d6. So we'll roll that. No successes. So we'll skip right then over to Argentine Navy versus the British Task Force. So this detection is actually a pretty long shot for the patrol. They don't have really good gear, and they're not that ambitious. And so they will only detect from coastal on a d12. And they do not detect. Okay, so that is the end. We're going to go now into scramble surveillance early warning. We'll note that the scramble modifier is +1, and we are comparing to a 4. So we'll go ahead and roll that. And nothing there. So that was an 8. So no air ops today. And I don't know if any of you watching this are wondering, why is it that we are going so frequently here between attacks? And if you look historically at major operations and major campaigns, it's very difficult from a maintenance perspective to sustain combat operations with squadrons for weeks on end. It's just the logistics aren't there for it, the personnel aren't there for it, and the wear and tear on the aircraft aren't there for it. So it was not uncommon for a couple of days to go by between major strikes or sorties, particularly if your intelligence is imperfect. If you don't really know where they are, you don't want to be wasting gas. You want to act on good intelligence when you have it. And so some days a strike may come, some days they may not. And you really want to have a mass. You want to have a concentration of fire when the weather and the situation, the intelligence favors your actions, and that's what this system is modeling here. They're not going to whittle away their fighters at return. That would be ahistorical. Okay, so we're at the end turn, and again, big thing to do at the end of the turn. Oh, we're going to have to do something here. Is recovery. We'll do this refit. These guys will go be readied. All right, I have 4 aircraft here, and I'll roll these top down in pairs that I need to roll d10s to see if they're fine. Just to make sure I'm absolutely consistent on which number I'm going for here. This is rule 7.3, and unless it points me somewhere else for the weather. Here we go for recovery. A separate recovery roll is made for each carrier immediately after all relevant areas have been placed there. 5 each die rolled is independent. It will vary depending on the weather chart. If a 1 is rolled during the recovery, it's been lost. Okay, got it. So I'm rolling d10s, and 1s are bad. So I'll roll the first pair of d10 rolls. 2d10. All right, the first 2 are fine. And now I'll roll the second pair of d10 rolls. Also fine. Okay. So that could have been worse. I'll take it. Now I don't need to flip any of my submarines. Technically I may have needed to flip the one in the coastal, but it is moot. Put the weather back, adjust everything else, and we're good. Okay, on to turn 12. All right, we're getting close enough here where I'm actually going to want to consider next turn this Gibraltar event. But I do get to punt one more turn on that. So weather for turn 12 is a 5. which we keep going from crummy weather to good weather, crummy weather to good weather. Okay, so gray, fine, no modifiers, perfect weather. Event draw, well, not perfect. Let's see what the event is now. Okay, 14, a thorn in their side. A thorn in the side, I'm sorry. Okay. A lone Argentine spy trawler continues to shadow the task force, despite repeated warnings to leave the area. Again, as is this way this game works, I have two options. We may task 2 Sea Harriers and 1 warship to stop the vessel, land a helicopter boarding party, and then sink her. Remove any 1 warship, not submarines, carriers, or landing ships, and place on the turn track 1 space in advance of the current turn. It becomes available for normal operations the next turn. When it is placed back on the task force display, then take 2 ready Sea Harriers and place them in the flown box. Okay, so I can, cough up some resources for 1 turn to go effectively sink this guy. Take no action. This event remains face up. As long as the event remains on the board, Scramble modifier is modified by -1 in all Argentine task groups. Use an enhanced search regardless of the weather. This search card can only be removed when you choose option A. Well, I'm on my good carrier turn, so why don't I choose to just sink this guy? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So what I take is 1 warship and 2 Sea Harriers. So here's my, let's see, these are my 2 Sea Harriers. We'll put those in flown. And now I will take my 1 warship, and again, I'll take this guy back here and move him 1 turn ahead. And there we go. All right, so the event has been handled. Discard that. Sit rep, press on. Okay, so we're now on 10. We'll note, I believe, that this deck is exhausted at either 15 or 16. Which perhaps I'm going a little fast. Let's take a look here. The situation report. There are 16 sitrep markers, and the last one represents the San Carlos landings. And so if I wanted to, and in fact I probably should, get perhaps even next turn choose to hold. If I what card am I on now? I'm on turn 12, and I updated. All right, so I've not yet flipped the sitrep. Interestingly, I think I may have gotten a turn off on all of this because I had 2 turns where I delayed on the first stream, where I voluntarily chose one because of some pretty crummy weather and I didn't want to do air ops, so I chose not to advance the sit rep, and then I had a ceasefire that kept me from going anywhere. So here, I believe I somehow got 1 off and I lost that. I should be on 10. If I keep going here, in 6 more turns, I'll be on 16. So we'll play card 10. And even if I did that right, I'll choose to sit here. If I do 6 more cards in 6 turns and get to the island, I'll go 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And I'll essentially have spotted myself 1 set of reinforcements that I could have before the scheduled start of Sutton that the MPs are placing on me. So I'll choose to wait this one. I'll then steam a bit closer, and if I don't get an event that interrupts my progress between now and then, when I get pretty close to the islands, I might pause 1 more day or just choose to press on, because I do want these follow-on forces to catch up to me. Okay, so there we are on the sitrep card. We will now do the task force deployment. I will not plug that hole. I like my submarines where they are. I need to consider what I'm doing now that I have fewer Harriers available to me. I think what I'll do is I will do my preferred deployment into the weak spot. I will do 2 Harriers to interdict, which leaves me 1 spare Harrier, which I will park here in one of these approaches. And I'll now do the interdiction. So this is 2d6. No luck again. Okay. All right, so that was our deployment. Argentine naval deployment will start with its submarine rolling 3d4. No ones are rolled, so it stays in the search box. So we'll now go to see if these guys get ready. They ready on a d6 and a d8 respectively. Does not ready, does not ready. And so now we'll just figure out what this coastal vessel ends up doing. And he will roll 3d6 for his placement. And he stays right where he is. Okay, so we've done the deployment. Sub v sub combat. We are the British submarine in the search area will detect its adversary submarine on a d8. It does not. The Argentine submarine will detect the British submarine in the search area on a d10. It does. Okay. So now that that's happened, the engagement between the Argentine submarine and the British submarine also happens on a d10. So I'll go ahead and roll that. I rolled an 8. So now that that attack failed, the British will flip, and the Argentine will go back to ready for war. So that's fine, and ready for war. Okay, so the sub gave good chase, ended up not being successful. British sub versus Argentine service combatant. This will be on a detection on a d4. Good detection. We've met the requirements for the rules of engagement, so this attack will now also be on a d4. Not successful. Boy, that's kind of exactly what we had last time. So we'll roll the d12 here, rolling a 6 on the post-attack or the failed attack resolution. So British sub versus Argentine vessel, we're rolling a 6. Target changes course away from the task force. The sub-captain postpones the attack. Course change proves temporary. Argentine vessel returns to its originating box. So it comes right back here and is now able to attempt to detect the submarine and then subsequently engage the task force. So this submarine detection for in the coastal box for this group it happens on a d6, as they do for all of them. D6, roll the 3, no detection. So now it will roll its d12 to attempt to detect the task group. Oops, wrong d12. That would can never roll a 1 on 2d6. There we go. Okay, no detection. All right. So again, no modifiers this time. Air alert assessment of 5. Okay, so this did change. So I did pull the card. So unmodified, the number is a 5. I rolled a 6. So again, no adversary air actions. The tension is building. Okay, save and turn. We'll start with let's get the submarine flip back around. Let me grab all the Harriers, bring them back. Okay. And I have decent weather, so I don't need to worry about refit, and we're good. Okay, so that's the end of the turn. We're now going to turn 13. This guy comes back to us. We'll note that we now are on a reinforcement turn, so I'm going to revisit that a couple of these events now, regrettably. Okay, yeah, we're just going to have to do it. All right, so the weather, again on 2d6. Roll the 7. Oh, and I did forget to do this. Return, and then I roll the 7. Okay, completely normal weather. Event draw. Let me get the sequence of play here correct with the existing events that I want to resolve. Yeah, event card draw, resolve current events, and then resolve onboard events. Okay. So here's the new event. 5. Our American friends are concerned about their own backyard. The United States ambassador to the United Nations has convinced President Reagan to table his own proposal, Resolution 508, calling for a 24-hour cessation of hostilities to pursue an honorable resolution to the crisis. You may A, accept the call for ceasefire. A ceasefire is introduced. International opinion rises by 1. Also, if domestic opinion, and it's the same as we've seen before, if it is 6 or more, which I believe it is. Yeah, my domestic opinion is 8. It will fall by 1. Okay, so I can take the ceasefire, which would park me a turn, or reject the call. Domestic opinion is 4 or less. Domestic opinion falls, and roll a d10. If the roll is less than or equal to the current level of international opinion, then international opinion falls. British have succeeded in blocking the resolution, but they still pay the diplomatic price. So that would probably happen. If the roll is greater than the current level of international opinion, the international opinion falls by 2 when the ceasefire is introduced for 1 turn. Okay, this is just kind of really a terrible, terrible turn. Honestly, I want to take the ceasefire, not go anywhere. I'll take the 1 rise in international opinion, and I'll lose the domestic opinion. I think that's what I have to do. So skipping to this ceasefire sequence of play. This might be good for me because I still should get my reinforcements, and that is potentially a turn marker, opinion adjustment. Actually, I'll have to check the errata for this because it doesn't quite state that you get reinforcements on a ceasefire turn. So let's see here, and there's no clarifications on that. Well, certainly those ships are, the turn is still there. The situation report doesn't need to advance, so I'm going to go ahead and take those reinforcements when they come up. So let me resolve all these. Okay, so I will take the ceasefire. We are in a ceasefire turn. The way that this event now is going to resolve for me is as follows. Wait a minute. 2 turns? Okay, I slightly misread that. If I accept this, then I have a 2-turn ceasefire. And I have the swap in opinion. Or I can reject it and essentially lose international opinion. So I can lose 2 turns of progress, let reinforcements catch up to me. If I lose this turn and next turn, I'm on card 10. So if I lose 13 and 14, then I'll be on card 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That still gets me 1 turn of slip on a ceasefire in order to make my timeline. I think I take it. So I have 2 turns of ceasefire, and I'll just run through this sequence of play. So I want to put this up here for a moment to remind me to resolve it. So international opinion rises by 1, so I'll take international opinion up to 10, but but the domestic opinion falls by 1, so domestic opinion goes down to 7, and that will be up there for 2 turns, this turn and next turn. While I am here, I'm going to revisit event 35, which here we go. Massively enhancing security on the rock. This includes the imposition of curfew, etc., etc. The Spain reacts aggressively to this totalitarian act. International opinion falls by 1. This is going to keep me from risking my reinforcements coming through due to limpet mines and having severe opinion falls. So we're going to jack up security on the rock, discard event 35, and now lose that international opinion that I had just gained. As long as I'm here, let me look at 18 to see if I could potentially fix this. I can get both carriers back operable in the same turn if I cough up a domestic opinion, and honestly, so far this is working for me, so I'm okay. All right, so my calculus stands. So this turn and next turn are ceasefire turns. We will play these out. and take a look here. While I'm reviewing Ceasefire Play, if you guys have joined late in the stream, thank you for joining me. Feel free to chime in on chat. Let me know that you're here if you have any questions. So we've done the turn marker. We've done international opinion. Oh, it's explicit here. British reinforcements are placed normally. Okay, so we'll just kind of run through this straight. So we've done the turn marker. We've done the opinion adjustment. We do the naval deployment rules for the Argentine off-board ones, but not in port or at sea. The ready for box is advanced normally. So what's going to happen here is over the at the end of during this is turn naval turn, I'll get a D6 on this one. Does not ready. A D8 on this one. Does not ready. And the submarine would advance to port normally. And then we get the Sea Harriers will process and they will become ready. And they're fine. And now I will take the reinforcements. And so since this is the first time we're doing the reinforcement sequence of play, let's take a look at that. That's chapter 18. It's an incredibly short chapter, but that's fine. When reinforcements arrive, simply place them on the display. That's easy. They must be placed on the scheduled turn of arrival. They may not be held back. Damaged vessels and vessels that have been performing special operations also return to play during the reinforcement segment of the task force phase. Okay, so if I come here now to my reinforcements, we'll notice a nice big pile here on 13 May, which would be today. And I'll just move those here. And look what we have. Okay, so this is a number of fleet landing ships, I'm sorry, LPDs. We've got some frigates, and we've got a number of support and and troop ships. So we'll just kind of bring these guys all up here. The support ships, we're going to kind of place in a support ship stack just to keep things cleaned up a little bit. Troop ships, we are also going to place in a stack. Support, there we go. Troop ships now, we have a couple of these coming in. I will put the passenger liner in its own space. And now I have a couple of frigates and 2 LPDs to worry about. So I'm going to have to go back to my combat card to really take a little bit of a closer look at these to figure out where I want them. It looks like the LPD is actually also going to be restricted to being in the center display. Particularly as I don't see any air-to-air weapon system. I'm sorry, anti-air weapon systems on it. It would strike me as a particularly awful idea to place it out there by itself. So we are not going to do that. So I'll go ahead and place them in their own stack as well. Put the troop ships here towards the Union Jack. There we go there, or the ensign rather. Okay, and so now I have 2 additional frigates, a T-21 and a leader. The T-21 has a fairly capable Seacat weapon system, which doesn't have a ton of range, but it's okay. It also has a pretty pooey radar lock modifier. 3 is not very great. What else do we have? We have so that's T-21. We have an LDR. The LDR is actually quite good, and so I might put the LDR out here in the defense zone along with the Coventry. Although, no, I might want to double up out here in the northeast and the northwest. So what do I have out here? I have a T-42, which has a pretty good radar lock and a Sea Dart system. So if I put the Seacat with that from the T-21, yeah, I think that's a pretty good pairing. So we'll put these guys paired up here. And then if I look in the T-42, it has a very capable radar system, pairing it with the LDR, which also has a data center radar system, but they can give each other overlap a little bit in their weapon deployment. So, okay. All right, well, better than nothing. And somehow I have this T-21 that I completely forgot to put back where he goes. All right, so that was our reinforcements. And looking back over the ceasefire sequence of play, that is the end of the day, I think. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Reagan, for, continuing to waste our time. We'll now skip, go all the way through here. 13 is done. I'll go ahead and clear the weather off since it really doesn't matter. Return. Okay. 13 is done. So we'll now go to 14. We will be getting reinforcements. This is also a ceasefire turn. So the ceasefire sequence of play has us advance the turn marker to 14. There is no further adjustment. We've already had our adjustment. We will get a chance to look at these naval deployments again, see if they're ready while we're all waiting. Okay, the battle group does move to ready for war, and let's see if the carrier does not. At the end of the turn, it is now ready to go. Okay, and that was the naval deployment. The Harriers are fine, and now I get yet another increment of British reinforcements. In this case, another support ship, and we'll put that in the pile of support ships. Okay, so that will take us, and that'll wrap. So now we'll just go from turn 14 to turn 15. Save. All right, and that now ends the meddling of the United States. So starting here on turn 15, let's go ahead and check our weather. 4 is going to be beautiful weather, which means that we've got some really, really good detection for the carrier group, which is not going to sortie, but the scramble modifier is increasing. So that's our weather. Now let's take a look at our event and hope that we don't get more crummy events. 19 is our event. I counted them all out. Something tells me I'm going to be forced to bomb something. Okay. RAF commanders in London are lobbying intensively for a Vulcan bombing raid on Port Stanley Runway, an operation that will require support from the Sea Harrier Force. We may reject the plan, resulting in a major dispute and tactics leaks to the media. Domestic opinion would fall by 2. Which would bring us from not good to worse. We're currently at 6 on domestic opinion. That would drop it to 4. Or we can mount the raid. First, the player places up to 5 Sea Harriers from the ready boxes and places them in the free spaces on the combat display. They will support the Vulcan attack. Roll 3d8 for the Vulcan bomb run. On every 1, a bomb strikes the runway. Then roll 1d6 for each Sea Harrier in the combat display. On a 1, the runway suffers additional hit. Thank you, Sea Harriers. Reducing Argentine supply level by 1 for each successful runway hit. So there is an upside here. Then roll 1d6 a second time. If that number rolled is greater than the number of Sea Harriers on the combat display, the RAF leaks to the media that the task force did not adequately support our operation. Domestic opinion falls by 1. Then roll 1d8 for each Sea Harrier in the combat display. If the result is 1, the Harrier is shot down, removed from the game. Then place all surviving Sea Harriers in the flown box. Okay, so a little bit of history here for those of you that are doing this, and I'd like to do. Let me see if I can do one of these newfangled things with Twitch. I'm pretty sure I can put in a stream marker. That way, I remember to come back and to do this. Here we go. So the thing I wanted to discuss briefly is this actually happened, as would a great many of these things, but coordination at the time between the RAF and the Royal Navy was not great. And the RAF really kind of felt that it was being marginalized and was missing an opportunity to show its relevance in this fight. And really, not to be unfair to the British, at the time, the American joint fight was really not well coordinated at all either. So this isn't just on the Brits, but this is when it was happening. The RAF really felt like they were missing an opportunity to show their relevance, and particularly the strategic bombing forces of the RAF, these Vulcans. And so they were trying to fix that. They were trying to desperately to get to the table, to do something and to have an effect here. Regrettably, though, if any of you want to pull out a globe, the Vulcan bombers in the British Isles and other bases in Europe were remarkably closer to their targets in the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc than anywhere the British could base them to reach Argentina. Like this was, very early for something this long. And so in-flight refueling had to be done. And it was actually a logistics miracle that actually had this work. And I encourage you, I'll try and go on Wikipedia and find the link to the Wikipedia article that shows you the sequence of air tankers that were needed to support this operation. But it was something obscene, like to support a Vulcan bombing force of 4 bombers. 20 Vulcan bombers had to be generated, with 16 of them being refuelers to refuel and make sure everyone made it back. It was absolutely amazing how much that took, and they did do it, and for the most part, all the bombers made it back. Regretfully, though, they were somewhat ineffective. So sorry for the segue into the history lesson there, but it was just a very interesting operation for long endurance, global reach type things, which really we kind of take for granted now. It wasn't that long after this, in the mid 90s, that for the first couple times the United States Air Force did bombing missions from Barksdale, Louisiana to Iraq in one sortie to enforce no-fly zones, or to actually enforce penalties for violations of no-fly zones. So just really, really impressive stuff. So I'm going to do it to support the RAF here. I am going to mount the raid, mostly because I don't want to lose 2 domestic opinion. And I have to do this as it is. So I am going to, for the moment, my air group's not working together event is in place. So I am going to send up all 5 Harriers to be from the Hermes. They are going to support this operation, and we're just going to kind of, grab lots of people here. We are on board with the RAF. Okay, so the 5 Sea Harriers scrambled. We are now going to roll 3d8 for the Vulcan bomb run. So 3d8. I didn't roll a single one. Super. Great job, Vulcans. This is completely historical. Now I'm going to roll for the Sea Harriers on the combat display. Each roll of a 1, they have a successful hit on the Stanley runway. So I have 5 of mine. So I'll be rolling d6. So I'll do it as a 3. I got a single hit, and I got another 2. All right, so I have 2 hits from the Harriers. On each one, roll the Stanley runway suffers an additional hit, reducing the supply level by 1 for each successful hit. So supply will fall from 8 to 6. We're doing great here on supply. Okay, now we'll roll a d6. If the number rolled is greater than the number of Harriers, we'll lose public opinion for not supporting them. So hopefully we just don't roll a 6. Whew, okay, RAF was happy with our support. And now I get to roll a d8 to bring each of these back. So top 3 left to right on d8s. All right, I lose the first one. And the other 2 make it. So those will land. And now on these 3, I will roll their d8s. And those are fine. Okay, so I lost 1. Harrier to air defenses. So Tartan 2 is shot down. I'll put him over here with the other lost forces that I have. So, okay. All told, actually, that was fine. We lost 2 supply. I burned a lot of Harriers. Losing 1, but you know we're going to lose those. As any solitaire game or game system like this that we're playing, these are resources and you're going to lose them, and you'd rather lose them as late as possible. Now, regrettably, I don't have that much left on deck for what is promising to be really good weather for a lot of stuff coming at me. So I am going to go ahead and take the public opinion hit to discard my Air Ops card at this point. So discard each of those, and that is good. Okay, so that was an exciting event. But now both carriers can participate in today's operations. So SITREP, we will get closer to our adversary here on turn 15. So the new SITREP is card 11. Still air alert assessment of 5, still 2 that are coming at us. An additional Rio Gallegos is now available. So this really could come from anywhere. It really could. I'm going to have to really kind of double check my task force deployment here. First of all, submarines. I like my submarines 2 deep. Let's consider the SAS, our special operators here and where we want them. Are they up next? The task force display. You know, I'm pretty happy with that task force placement. So cap, interdiction, and SAS. Okay. I do want. I'll try and restrict most of the operations here to the Hermes that we can, but all right, so we'll do that. I will do 2 more. All right, and that'll be the standing cap. I'm trying to figure out if I want to try and do an actual interdiction here. At 6, we're looking better and better on this, and I'm still several days away. You know what? I think I hold off. I think supporting that bombing was a pretty good day, and so I'll keep these in my pocket for scrambles. But that'll be the deployment. Now, where do I want these special operators to queue me? Most likely, 1, 2, or 3 is Trelew. 6, 7, or 8 is San Julian, Rio Grande, and Rio Gallegos. So they're all pretty even. But again, the most severity coming from these exosets. So I'm going to keep staring at the exosets. Okay, task force is good. Naval deployment. The submarine is in port. We'll see where he goes. So that'll be 3d4 for him. He will come forth here to coastal. All right. And now the surface combatants. We'll start with the readiness on the carrier group. 1d8 for them. They do ready. I will take a look at the coastal guy, figure out where the patrol goes. Stays where he is. And now we'll see if the battle group comes out to sea. He does not. Okay, that's naval deployments. Sub v sub combat. Now that will happen here in the coastal area. British will detect on a D6 as they have been. So British detection, no detection. The Argentine detection here will happen in the coastal area on a D8. Also no detection. Okay. British sub versus the surface combatant. I do have a surface combatant here. This will detect on a D4. I do detect, so I'll move them there. So now the ROEs have been satisfied. We have had ships sunk. So what we should have, just reviewing briefly, Argentine submarine versus that. Okay. So this is the attack roll. So versus the surface combatant, the attack roll is a D4. No joy. And now that attack failed, we'll do the failed attack resolution on table A. So this is 2d6. I rolled a 6, which means that they broke away, the attack postponed, but the course change was temporary, and the adversary comes back to the box. Okay. So that is British sub versus the Argentine surface combatant. Now the surface groups versus our subs. This guy here is detecting on D6 like all the others. He does not detect, and so now for him going for the task force, that'll be on a D12 for this patrol group. No success. Okay, not a lot happening in the Navy. Scramble, something might happen. So I'm going to be subtracting a 1 here. The air alert assessment is a 5. So this is D10 minus 1. Nothing happens. Another quiet air day. I think they've only actually sent out aircraft 1 time this entire game so far. So dodging a bullet. All right, so let's see here. We'll go to the intern, turn 15. Save. All right, so what do we need to do at the intern? We grab all these guys, land them. Weather's fine, so we'll go ahead and just move those guys to arming. We'll clear the weather. All right, I think we're okay. All the subs are right side up. So we are done with turn 15. Let's do one more turn here. Let's do the 16th, and we'll get a few more reinforcements. All right, so on the 16th, weather on D12. I rolled an 8. All right. The only big change here was in the mist. The scramble modifier is now in our favor. Less likely to scramble. Event draw. 43. Those Whitehall pin pushers. This may be one that we actually had before. Or maybe not actually. There's multiples of this event, so we'll call it fine. All right, this would be the second time that we've done this. Let me go in the discard, make sure we've got either card 41 or 42 in there. Make sure that I didn't pull out the wrong one. Yeah, pin pushers 42. So we just drew another one of these. Okay. Oh, come on. We must make a WOD roll, which is essentially averaging the display. So I've got a 9 and a 6, average to 15. So that's 7.5 rounded down to 7. And we're going to roll. So the current level is 7, and I'm going to roll a D10. I rolled a 3. So it was less than the WOD level. We receive approval to proceed, discard the event. Oh boy, I'm glad. Did not have a lot of days left on my preferred pace here. All right, do I want to do anything with these? Nope, they're fine. Okay, so we'll discard 11, go to 12, get a little bit closer. Still a slight the mix of bases. The long range bases are now slightly less likely. We're still 5 on the alert assessment. We're still 2 on the effort assessment. But now we're seeing much more work from Rio Gallos and San Julian. So these 2. And that'll be that. So we're now on SITREP 12, task force deployment. Excuse me. Okay. Reinforcements arrivals. This is turn 16, and we do get a new submarine on turn 16. See, this is a good day. I think we go where the hunting is good, and we push this new submarine into the coastal area. Do what we can there. Okay, so that was our reinforcement. Submarines 2 and 1 is a good deployment. Task force display placement. Content with task force where they are. Cap. This is another kind of don't have a ton of aircraft available. I will do 2 forward as I have. I'll keep 2 in my pocket. And I will put 2 on interdiction. So that'll be that. Let me do the interdiction now. Rolling 2d6. I did roll a 1, so we've interdicted supply again. And these guys will come back and land. All right, so we've done that. SAS, Okay, so the more likely ones are these two bases here. However, I'm still wanting to keep my eye on those exit sets, so I'll keep the SAS marker where it is. Naval deployments. All right, their submarine is still to sea, so see if he scoots around, stays exactly where he is. We'll see if the carrier, oh, the carrier did ready. All right, so I'm sorry, at the end of that last turn, he would have moved here. And so now we're checking where their surface combatants do. So the patrol rolls 3d6, figure out where he goes. He stays where he is. The carrier rolls 3d6, also comes out here, okay. And now the battle group rolls 3d6, and they stay in port. All right, so that's naval deployment. All right, sub v sub combat. We have a ball game now, don't we? So now that we've got a whole big contested box here with 3 submarines and 2 task forces in the near coastal region, let's just make sure we don't miss anything here. So we've done all the deployments. All right, so let's just make sure we get this right. We do have a contested box. Each British submarine in a contested box roll 1 die of the value indicated on the detection roll in the combat chart, cross-referencing the number. So we'll do that. So for the coastal detection of submarines, this is a D6. I have 2 submarines that can't do detection, so this is going to be 2 D6. Nobody does a detection. So that is the end of the British detection. I now have 1 Argentine sub. It will roll a D8 for its coastal detection. It does detect, and so it gets paired off. I'll move this guy here. We'll pair these. Okay, so it will do its attack roll. The Argentine sub attacks on a D10 and misses. Okay, so remove the surviving British submarines from the combat display, placing them back in the appropriate naval patrol boxes, but we'll rotate them. So unfortunately, he can't engage the surface combatants. And remove all surviving Argentine submarines and place them back in the ready for war box. All right, that's the end of sub v sub. British sub versus Argentine surface combatant. So the one that's flipped, I can't do anything with. He spent his entire turn dodging the Argentine sub, but this one can now. So let's see here. Let's make sure now that I've got 2 task groups I can work on. Unrotated British submarines may attempt a detection. Make 1 roll for each sub, choosing in advance of the roll which task group the submarine will attempt to detect. And of course, I'm going to be going for the carrier. So that's a D4 here in the coastal areas. Success. So the carrier has been detected. I'll move that in. And now, as usual, we have to do our ROE. ROE is satisfied, so this will be an attack against a surface combatant, which is a D4. Wow, okay, well that just worked. If the attack is hit, Argentine counters are permanently removed from play. Note, successful target attacks outside the exclusion box will have an impact on international and domestic opinion. So 14.3. We'll take a look at that. But essentially, we sunk or crippled the enemy carrier, which I call a good day. So, boy, I just don't want this to go to, you know what? It's not just off board. It's over here and sunk. All right, so let's take a look at 13.4 to see what that's about. Here we go. Well, maybe. Let me just clarify. 14.3, I'm sorry. All right, so as far as then the combat losses, oh, interesting. So let's take a look here at the various losses. We have not been playing this to date, so let's just catch ourselves up here. Argentine submarine loss. At the end of any turn in which an Argentine submarine is lost, all Argentine task groups are placed off board and submarines are placed ready for war. They re-enter the game normally. All right, we didn't do that, so that was one in the Argentine favor. They stayed, well, maybe not. I mean, they stayed out towards us. For a task group, which just happened, if any task group is lost, and in reality this represents the loss of one or two major assets, then all Argentine submarines are immediately placed in the ready for war box. And the submarine already was. And all surviving task groups are placed off board. So we'll go ahead and do that. Off board, and we'll put this guy off board too. Okay, off board, got it. They re-enter the game as appropriate. Political impact of Argentine losses. The impact on war opinion is dependent on when and where the losses occur. Argentine losses sustained in the exclusion box have no impact. So I'd have to replay the tape to figure out where we sank that submarine, but task group, but we did sink it after the British vessel sank. So if an Argentine vessel is sunk in the search box and no British vessels have been lost, international opinion falls, but we had already lost the British vessel. If the domestic opinion is 4 or less in an Argentine task group or submarine is sunk in the search box and no British domestic opinion also falls by 1. Okay, none of that's happened. These changes in international domestic opinion are applicable on each occasion they occur. In all other circumstances, losses in the search box have no political impact. So I'm pretty sure that earlier is fine, but now we're in the coastal box. If an Argentine task group or submarine is sunk within the coastal box, and no British vessels have yet been lost, international opinion falls by 2. Well, that's not the case. In addition, if domestic opinion is currently 4 or less, which it is not, Argentine task group is sunk and no British vessels have been lost. No, that doesn't happen. In all other circumstances, losses within the coastal box have no potential impact. So the only thing I think I really have to catch up here is a political impact of British losses and operational impact of British losses. So 14.4, the political impact. Change of perception of the politicians and the British. British surface losses, the following impact. Hermes Invincible QE2 can bear a loaded ship transport. That's huge. Any other surface vessel is hit. Domestic opinion drops by 1. British nuclear submarine is hit. Roll a d10 and consult the table. Well, better late than never. So let's see what happens with that submarine. I rolled a 5. Seems like a nice middle of the round number. Submarine suffers minor damage, but is forced to withdraw to the Ascension Islands for repairs. News of the withdrawal is leaked to the base. Upon arrival to the base, the submarine is permanently removed from the game and domestic opinion falls by 1. So this is easy enough to mostly attempt to catch up on. So we'll now reflect domestic opinion being at 5 instead of 6. I really do need to keep an eye on domestic opinion. Operational impact of British losses, as well as the direct impacts on the games. If troop ships are hit, the attached units are permanently removed. With the fleet support ship, we change the victory level of a carrier. Okay, I think we're good. I think we're actually really good. So only small impacts from having missed enforcing that earlier. But big win here on knocking out the carrier. That's going to make my life a bit easier here for the last stream that we get into when we get into it. Okay, so there are no surface combatants left to do anything. So we are done with the naval segment. Interesting. Okay, so now we're doing the scramble. Scramble modifier at +1 due to crummy weather. Yeah, +1 due to crummy weather. The level is 5. So rolling a d10. Wow, okay. Still not a lot happening. We are done with turn 16. But not an inconsequential turn. A lot of stuff happening here between, the last 2 turns from events. A lot of strong narrative here coming from the events, so that was pretty good. So let's go ahead and end turn 16 here. Let's see, what do we have to do? We have to get all of our Harriers recovered. We don't have to do any recovery rolls, I'm pretty sure. No, we're fine. So we'll ready those. We will get those into arming. We'll go ahead and clear the weather. And let me flip back around this submarine. Okay, we are good with end turn. I will advance the turn marker to 17. And this looks like a reasonable place to leave the stream tonight for a 2-hour stream. It looks like what we're going to be able to do next week when we resume the stream is play through and start the landings. We may or may not be able to finish them, but I think certainly we'll get to the point where Operation Sun is going to start. Well, I'd very much like to thank all of you for joining me, those that came by to watch the stream live. If you're catching the stream on recording, hope you enjoyed it. Please do leave me feedback. I love to hear what you think and how I can make the stream better. So leave comments or share the video if you think anyone else had enjoyed it. You can find me on Board Game Geek as Alec or AlecMG. You can also find me on Twitter and Twitch, twitch.tv/AlecMG and Twitter @AlecMG. And finally, you can join the conversation at Reddit at reddit.com/r/hexencounter. Thank you all very much. Had a great time playing today, and hope to see you all soon and in the near future. Have a good night, everyone.